PGTI Vertical Bronze. PGTI is standing of course for Popcorn, Goated, Tracking, Invincible. Being a popcorn scenario, you have a target spawning, flying up, falling down. But because you have only the tracking invincible, it's only one target that goes up and down. With the bronze variation, you basically get only the up and down version on a big target. In later versions for higher skills, you also get the left and right and the variation in speeds. And so, after the Ground Plaza tracking which was only horizontal, and the air tracking scenarios which were mixed, now we have a pure vertical tracking scenario. And I recommend to train this scenario with two sensitivities. One sensitivity being something very fast. I don't know, maybe like 15, something can be really fast. It doesn't matter too much, like 23 maybe is also fine, 17 is fine. Where you can really just train your fingers. This is one of the joints you can use for precise movement. By the way, I'm very much a palm grip aimer that just transitioned to fingertip aiming recently. So my fingers are the least trained joint, which you can also see in the results here. It's very shaky. You see me aiming by steps and not very smooth motion. That's one thing I need to move on. So a good scenario for me now to train my fingers. This sensitivity. And try to just set a sensitivity that trains your fingers in a full range of motion way. So right now it's nearly full range of motion. I think I could go a little bit slower, maybe 2 centimeters slower. So I really can use my full range of motion from my fingers. But besides that, of course, the usual tracking rules apply. Try to not flick too much, just to smoothly copy the speed of the target to your fingers in this case. Now we go for another round, but this time I will use a different joint. This time I will use my arm. So I use roughly a slow sense. So this is 46 or 45 centimeters roughly. Matter. And now this time I will use my complete arm to track. And for this I will now try to actually lock my fingers so I do not use them too much. So I really want to copy the speed now by moving my elbow on the table up and down, and this motion of course is powered by the muscles in your shoulder or your upper arm basically. And these muscles are very strong. They can make big movements very fast, but because of the size of the muscles they are not inherently precise. It's something you just need to train so they can move them smoothly and precisely. Because I'm a palm grip aimer, this motion is for me easier than the fingertip aim, but it might be different for you depending on where you come from, what mouse you have, how you train, how much your mousepad glides, for example, and all those things. You see I'm getting very unprecise on the end and on the top, and of course, because there is where the acceleration applies. And so try to increase the range or the distance of the ball where you are precise. Okay, and lastly, a third sensitivity, I recommend something in between. And of course, we just use it to train something in between. So now I have roughly 35 centimeters, which is the average for Overwatch players, as far as I know. And now I will try to combine my arm and fingers and use both a little bit. So just combine both joints. And here I really don't focus too much on which joint is actually used. I let my brain decide on its own which joint is perfectly to use. And also the sensitivity of 35. I can also use 30 or 40 centimeters or 25, and then depending on which sensitivity I choose, my brain will choose different joints for this type of motion. And this is what I want. So I recommend this type of scenario because the bot's always doing exactly the same thing to train with different sensitivity ranges. So you really warm up and train different joints. But I would recommend to stick to one sensitivity for like 1 week maybe before you change it, except for warming up. So for warming up you can just do one run with sensitivity or just use a sense randomizer, it's fine. Yeah. As soon as I use fingers you see my score goes down because I'm bad at fingertip aiming.